Good evening, everybody. This is Meet the Candidates here in Eastham, and we're very happy to be putting this on, the Eastham Chamber and partnering with the Eastham Dog Owners Association. We've been doing this for many years. I was reminded tonight that we missed one somewhere along the line, I think during COVID, but that's behind us now, and we're happy to just keep going along. We have a panel of all the people that are going to be on the ballot, all the candidates that are going to be on the ballot, and we're looking forward to hearing from them, hearing who they are, and some of their thoughts about town government and where they intend to take it. So again, we thank you all for participating, for giving your time like this, and I thank the audience for offering up questions, and if they have more questions, you're willing to, you can fill out the form and pass them up. We'll gladly go through it and present them if they haven't already been presented before. We're fortunate we have Teresa Martin. She's our moderator. She's the executive director of the Lower Cape TV, and we're happy to have her. She's experienced at this, and we love that she can carry this on and take us forward. So with that, I'll turn it over to Teresa.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hi, welcome. Thank you all for being here, and thank you all for being here, and thank, if anybody is listening, if anyone's listening to TV land or something, thank you for being here too. My voice is a little gravelly, my apologies. This is Bev Hobbs, who is our official timer. Would you like to talk about the timing?
I'm going to time it about 90 seconds, but if it's really interesting, we're going to let it go. I'm not going to be too judgmental. So, I'm not going to cut you off in the middle of a point. I think it's really a better way to phrase it.
Okay, last call. Does anyone else have any questions you'd like to hand in? The reason we're doing it is I'm aggregating questions so that 5 people aren't asking the same thing, because we respect everybody's time. And we'll kind of go in order. So if you don't know who everyone is, you all have this little card, and they kind of follows right along in line so you can figure out who everybody is, just in case you don't know. And they're all going to introduce themselves as well. So we're going to start with the 2 selectmen candidates. Actually, would you each start by saying who you are and give us like a super, super teeny little elevator pitch of who you are? Short, sweet, and then we're going to ask questions. Bob.
Yikes, okay. I'm Bob Bruns. I am lived in Eastham since full-time since May of 16. Had a home here since 2010 and been coming here as a vacationer with my kids and my wife and my kids for over 25 years. We were always attracted to the Eastham beaches and the small town feel. And before Eastham, I was in Ridgefield, Connecticut for 26 years, and my wife Paula and I raised 3 children. They're on various parts of the country, but we're kind of a destination at this point. I like it that way. 4th of July especially, everybody seems to congregate here, so we have some fun. My professional background, just briefly, was all in computer systems. I always say if you name a job in the systems field, I probably had it at one time or another over 40-plus years, and ended up as a GM, multiple data centers and strategic planning, all kinds of fun stuff. But what that really means today for me, how it's relevant, I think, is I come to problems and issues with a financial discipline and with a bend towards operational efficiency. That's just kind of the way I address issues and problems. I got involved in Eastham committees and such very shortly after I retired. I ended up on the Zoning Board of Appeals after meeting people on there and really thinking this would be a fun situation, and stayed on that for 7 years. Ended up as chair since last July. I've worked as the chair of the Harbor Planning Committee. With Shana Brogan, we put the first harbor plan together for the town of Eastham, which I thought was a really good thing since we are a coastal community. And when I got involved in the zoning board, which was particularly interesting, it was at the time when tea time was, kind of up for grabs. We were working with the Stafford Group, which was a development group that I thought was very difficult to work with, but I was very fortunate to come onto the board when we had some real heavy hitters. I don't know if you remember any names like Stephen Wasby or Ed Schneiderhan, certainly Joanne Verlinden, Bob Sheldon. So I was able to cut my teeth on the ZBA with some real good people, and I thought that was the only reason I was able to make it through and get to chair this year and enjoy that. And the past couple of years, I've been working on the zoning task force under the leadership of Mary Nee, and we've been doing a lot of good work, I think, on some of the zoning bylaws, proposing, last year we put in some regs on the bylaws that limited the size of housing based upon lot size, and this year we've been doing a lot of work on the commercial side, looking at the district of critical planning concern, really from Arnold's all the way up to Railroad Avenue, trying to look at that in terms of form-based code for development of commercial property. So last thing, just interested in being on the select board for a whole variety of reasons, but the biggest reason, of course, to me is I love the town, and I want to be a part of anything that can help keep it a terrific place to live.
Great, thank you very much.
So, thank you. Hopefully that helps.
And so Jamie, you want to introduce yourself, and then we'll move on to the questions.
Yep. Jamie Dimitri, this is my third term that I'm running for on the Eastham Select Board. I was born in Eastham, raised in Orleans, left for college and grad school for a few years, and eventually hit a wall when I was living in Boston and realized that there was no better place on the planet to live than Cape Cod, so I came back. And since I've been back, I kind of following in my parents' footsteps with running small businesses. I manage a small business in Orleans, and yeah, I guess I kind of lost my train of thought, so that's it.
Awesome. So what I've done is consolidated some of the questions, because some people have asked the same thing.
Okay.
And I kind of put them into categories. So first is just a standalone question, which is, in today's environment of difficult town priorities and resources, how would you rank the importance of climate change and protection of our natural resources?
Do you have a preference? on who goes?
It's either for both of you.
Oh, well, I'll just jump in.
Okay.
And again, remember, keep your answers brief, because the timer's going to go
How would
poop
I
on you.
rank it? I'd probably, if you look at the town strategic plan, which is, I think, kind of setting the tone for much of what the other committees and regulatory boards kind of look at. It's a high priority. It's one of the highest priorities. Again, we're a coastal community. So climate change, and I live very close to the water, sometimes too close, and it's getting closer. So there's no stopping it. And, in terms of what's going to happen if we don't change our ways. But, every little bit helps as far as I'm concerned. We do our part in terms of, compost, that kind of stuff. We do, limit our plastics. We try to keep the CO2 down to a dull roar. We've put in solar. We've done all kinds of things. And I'm very much passionate about that as an element of how we need to go forward, and especially in our own community.
What do you think, Jamie?
Can you repeat that one more time? Sorry, I just want to make sure.
Sure. In today's environment of difficult town priorities and resources, how would you rank the importance of climate change and protection of our natural resources?
Okay. So I think that protection of natural resources is probably been top priority for some of the decisions that we've been doing the last 6 years on the board, for sure. Climate change as well, to the degree that we can. It's definitely problematic being a coastal community, as everybody knows. I think with those two topics, one of the strongest tools that we have is education. With so many transient people coming to Eastham, not understanding the culture, not understanding how fragile our ecosystem is here, one of the best things we can do is educate them for the short time they're here. So one, they appreciate the community, but two, they do as little damage as possible, because it's more than just the year-round resident. It's also a lot of our visitors that, impact our community and our environment.
Next question is kind of related, and I'll have you answer first, Jamie, and then Bob. But everyone else on the panel should listen, because the person would like to ask it of each of you for your respective buildings, schools, libraries. Okay? What are your views on implementing energy efficiency measures and upgrades to our municipal facilities?
I think they're expensive at a time when our community is really strained. I think they're important, without a doubt. I mean, there's no question that it's something that we should be looking at and doing when we can. But I think that our community is facing some serious issues with regard to the cost of living here. And there's a fine balance between those two things that we have to find.
Bob?
Yeah, I think that, I don't know if I would make it an initiative, let's go out and do all that at once. I try to do those kind of things incrementally. As a GM, I ran P&Ls for many years, and, you've got, Jamie referenced the balance, you've got other expenses, so you really need to look at where what's on fire, and then how do you use, where do you go first, second, and third, et cetera. That is a top issue, but it can't necessarily overstep some of the other things that we're facing today.
Thank you. I'll get to all you when you come to it, but you got time to think about it. You got a little advanced thinking time. Okay, the next one is a whole series around rentals and leading into housing. So the first question is, can you comment and predict on the effect the new limits on rental unit permits will have on near and far-term full-time rental stock?
I can go first on that, I guess. I guess I can't predict that, but given the data that we've seen in other communities that have enacted these things, there's been a positive impact on housing stock. The reason that we, as the select board, thought that this tool would be helpful and offered it at town meeting for the town to vote on was because, given all of the information that was presented to us from the zoning task force, different studies that have been done in resort communities, one of the findings was that the restriction of the number of short-term rental certificates any one individual has been shown to be the most impactful in the grand scheme of things as far as preserving housing stock.
Yeah, we were trying to, in the zoning task force, this was one of those trying to nip it in the bud situations. I think there were 14 entities that had more than 2 properties listed under their, as titled in the Barnstable County in Eastham. So we knew that there would be some people affected, but we didn't want to see, 20% of the town rentals going to corporations or people just doing it to make a buck. So we think we were trying to nip this in the bud before it got out of control.
A couple people asked the same question in different ways. What are your views on implementing the residential tax exemption, and are you for or against the residential tax exemption, and why?
I'll go first on that one. I can't answer that yet, but I know because I can see both sides, and I haven't had meetings with the select board, my peers, if I am elected into this board. So I can certainly see both sides of it. I can see, I was a vacationer here, and I was also a part-time resident here with a home in 2010 to 2016, where we were here every other weekend kind of thing. Yet I'm very concerned about gentrification in the town. What's going on with, just people spending too much and losing control of their homes because of the price of the cost of living. So this is the kind of thing that, and I know that this went down, I think it was a 3-2 vote. So I can see both sides of it. I don't know enough about both sides of this, but I can tell you one thing. My bend would be to really, or how I would go about getting the information. I would really want to understand where the breakpoints are with respect to revenue. So what would the different differentials be between the part-time and full-time residents? How much revenue are we really talking about here? And why would they wait on this? There's some reasons why I've been hearing that people are waiting to enact this rather than just enact it now. So I don't really know the financials around this decision as well, but that's the kind of thing that I would look at.
I guess I'll open with that. I am in favor of it. I voted in favor of it this past cycle. But just to give a little background, several years ago, the Select Board, prior to COVID, had passed a vote that we would commit to enacting the residential tax exemption if the town held a ratio of 60% non-resident to 40% resident taxpayers for 2 consecutive years. And I was in favor of that at that time. I think it was a unanimous vote, I can't remember, but we've passed it. Since then, we've had COVID, we've had a shift in our housing, in our tax rate, all of those things. We've seen pretty drastic changes that usually occur over 20, 30, 40 years are happening over 5 years. And so for that reason, I have shifted my vote, seeing the residential tax exemption as being a tool that's more urgent now than waiting for the 60/40, especially with some of the expenses coming down the road for the town, and also the fact that we have so many residents who have lived here for 40, 50, 60 years, their whole lives, and had properties that, you know, historically, they knew what to expect when their tax bill came, and are seeing such huge jumps that it's a very real concern that some of our longtime residents have to consider selling their homes, and that's problematic. And so for that reason, I think the RTE is a good option.
Thank you. This is another affordable housing question. With affordable housing in gear, are there concerns of having enough jobs available in town to support them? In other words, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? And how do we support new and old businesses and housing for new and old employees, I guess?
Well, if you look around at, you know, the hospitality industry in this part of the Cape, everybody's crying out for more workers. So, I mean, at this, and people are, you know, I hear all the stories from the restaurant owners about how they were able to get J1s, or how they lost people, or they lost a person from one restaurant to another. So it becomes a situation where I think right now we're chasing people to come work here. And I think that there'll be a natural balance when that ends, because there'll be enough workers. But I don't really know which one comes first. I just know that right now we have a shortage, and it would be great if we could have, you know, housing to make this a lot easier for the people who we need.
Yeah, I agree with Bob. You know, we have such a shortage of people to work out here. I don't think that would be the problem I would be thinking of when it comes to affordable housing, for sure. Whether those are actual livable wage jobs that are year-round, I don't know about that, but there's going to be plenty of work in the short term for it.
This next question is completely different, completely different. Why would people with boat moorings have to win a lottery to have a dinghy on the shore to get to their boat? And how do you feel about that?
I'll
I had
answer
a
that.
question, and it's a policy question, so it's a fair question.
Why would they have to have a dinghy on the shore?
Why would they have to have win a lottery in order to have a dinghy on
Oh,
the shore?
win a lottery. Well, I guess there's a space problem.
Yeah.
That would be my knee-jerk on that. But I remember when I was on the Harbor Planning Committee, we would work with Scott, Richardson, I forget his last name, but he was our harbor master. And we were always trying to figure out how to get more kayaks, you know, and spaces for kayaks on the 4 landings that that are, you know, where people actually use all these watercraft. But to me, it's a space management issue, and, you know, I don't think the lottery is probably the one way of making it random. So that's probably the way it's been thought out.
Yeah, I agree with Bob. It's much like our kayak lottery that we have as well. There's a lottery for slots to store your kayak or paddleboard too. I kind of view it as the same sort of thing, to level the playing field and give everybody an equal opportunity to have a mooring.
Thanks. The next 2 questions are kind of asking the same thing, so I'm putting them together. One is, town meeting stated concern for high taxes given the age of population and fixed incomes. How would you respond to these taxpayers? And the related question is there a need to reduce municipal spending? And if so, what areas can be reduced?
Sorry, can you just read the first question again?
Sure. Taxpayers and town meetings stated concern for high taxes given the age of the population and people on fixed incomes. how would you respond to those taxpayers? And the other one is how, is there a need to reduce spending, and if so, what could be reduced?
I think there's a need, first of all, yes, I agree, the tax situation, in my view, is, I'll call it unsustainable. You can't go up 14% or thereabouts, year after year. It's not good. So how do we change that? Well, there's two ways to do this, right? There's income and there's expense. So the revenue side, I like what's going on with short-term rentals. I'm sure there's other ways to beat the drum and come up with more money, but, if it was so easy, it would have been done by now. I do think we're going to need to look at expenses and be very critical and very disciplined in how we spend money. I think that's the most important part of this job, by the way, is, you're talking about spending money on other people's money, and, people need to understand where the money's going and why you voted a certain way. If you can explain that, then you've probably done the job. But today, I don't know how we're going to, cut the legs out from under that number. I do know that I voted for the 2 extra policemen, for example, and I met personally with Chief Bohannon a couple of weeks before and asked him what was the deal on this, and he showed me some staffing models that I can understand, having done that kind of stuff, and he changed my mind. It really was a safety issue that we needed to address. So to me, that was not a discretionary item at all. But I've also heard some things about where we're getting budget information a little late. And I'd like to be able to make the entities that roll up into the budget get things to us in a more timely manner so that we can have a chance to ask them to go back and sharpen their pencil if it's in fact something that can be done. So there's probably process issues, and there's probably, items where we could look further, but I can't identify those right now.
Want to add anything, Jamie?
So I guess one of the things to look at is, some of the driving forces also of what are causing those taxes to go up. And in addition to looking at spending and, where that money is going, if that money needs to be spent on certain things, we also have to look at some of our social factors that are happening in the world around us and also impacting our tax rate. Because it's not just the town. It's also, it's the rate and price at which houses are selling. Those sales and the increased value of homes impact your taxes as well. So looking at ways to try to control or at least reduce the momentum that the housing market has also impacts taxes. So I think it's a matter of looking at, it's a multifaceted approach. It's not just cut spending. It's part of it. But just like, when there's a problem, I think there's lots of tools to solve the problem. When it comes to taxes, I think there's multiple facets that you have to look at when it comes to looking at that number. And just cutting services or just cutting spending isn't the only way.
And one last question for the Select Board candidate, which is kind of a follow-up to this, is are you looking at any working with other organizations across the region, any regionalization, any sharing of solutions to address any of the issues in order to be more efficient and cut cost?
Well, I think that we already are doing that and also working on doing that to the degree that we're able to. I mean, you need to have both parties agree to want to work together, but right now, we've been working with, the town of Wellfleet when it comes to water. We've been working with the town of Orleans when it comes to wastewater planning. I think there's been a lot of work that we've been doing with our surrounding towns. In addition to just doing projects together, I think there's been a lot of commingling when it comes to bylaws, legislation, things that are helping our community, decisions we're making, articles we're putting on our warrants, and sharing that information too. I know that the zoning task force had brought in some folks from Provincetown to meet with them. And I think that even little moves like that make huge differences because we don't all operate in a bubble, especially on the Outer Cape. We all face a lot of similar problems. So it's not just sharing staff, but sharing staff is part of it. It's also, taking on projects together. It's also sharing information. And I think all of those things are wildly important.
Yeah, I would just say I don't have experience with that yet on the board, but I'm certainly predisposed to be working with our surrounding towns and sharing information and becoming more efficient. I mean, that's basically one of the ways we can cut costs and improve quality.
Perfect. Well, thank both of you very, very much. And now we're going to move on to the elementary school committee, which is Devin and Sarah. And you guys should know what the first question I'm going to ask is, because I pre-warned you. What are your views on implementing energy efficiency measures and upgrades in the school?
We don't get to do our introduction of
Oh,
ourselves.
I'm sorry. I feel like everyone knows you. You do get to do your introductions first, but that's your first question. Sarah and then Devin.
Okay, great. Hi, I'm Sarah Higgins, and I'm actually running for 2 positions tonight, so I'll save us 90 seconds, and hopefully this will also address the library position as well. I have been coming to Eastham my entire life. My family has a long history here. My grandfather went to the schoolhouse museum, the school where the museum is now for the schoolhouse. My parents have lived here full-time for 25 years, and when I started my family, I moved here full-time. I had a long, almost 20-year career in finance, helping community banks across the country manage their interest rate risk, and I had my children later in life and decided to retire and stay home and take care of them. So I have a 5-year-old daughter who will start kindergarten in Eastham the next school year, and a 2-year-old daughter. About 2 years ago, when I was taking my then infant to the library every week for a mom's breastfeeding group, I had the pleasure of every morning meeting Mary Shaw, who many of you will know, and got to chat with her for a while and found out she was a library trustee, and started asking her questions and said, you know, when I come out of this world of taking care of a baby, I would like to get involved in the town, and asked her for her opinion, and she gave me the advice to start attending committee meetings to decide if you'd like to join. So I attended the library trustee meetings for 9 months before there became an opening, because someone had to leave in the middle of their term because they had to move out of Eastham. So the select board appointed me in January to the library. And then a neighborhood friend, when they heard that had happened, suggested that I should get on a school committee, as that's what she had done for her while her children were in school. So that was then definitely on my mind. And I didn't have the chance to attend as many school committee meetings in advance as I had wanted to. But when I saw that there was an opening that was going to be a vacancy, I decided to run at the last minute. So I have been to 1 school meeting, and I'm just excited to help the town in any way I can. My husband is a small business owner. He runs an acupuncture practice in Dennis, and I help him manage the business side of that, and I take care of my 2 girls.
Devin.
Hi, everybody. Devin O'Rourke. I live on 65 Knoll Street, which, if you know your maps, I'm 4 houses from the elementary school. I think I'm one of 2 people that walk their children to school. Although Finney, my daughter's 9, she's in 3rd grade, is just recently exploring the "I don't want you to walk me to school anymore, Dad." So a little hard. I've been around schools and in schools and part of schools probably most of my life. I think my first paycheck came from helping my friend Julia get through calculus together in high school. I was a teacher right out of college. I worked in boarding schools, so kind of a unique chance to live with the students as well as teach them. You're a coach, you're an advisor, you're their parent for 9 months of the year, frankly. That was high school children. A little different now with the young ones. But even in that vein now, I've been part of the Lower Cape Cod hockey organization for the last 3 years. I got to tell you, it is way harder to coach the 6, 7, 8-year-olds than it was the 14 to 18-year-olds. And kind of in the same light of arriving into wanting to be part of the school system to help in any way. I've been part of the elementary school. I was appointed this past fall, and I was sitting in that seat last year, running for a position, and we were asked questions about, what would you want to do? We'll face some of these questions in a minute. And I hadn't been part of the committee before, and I think just these last few months, it really has helped change my perspective, inform me on how much more it is about fostering, tending relationships than it is any one person's major initiatives. So in some ways, this is a hard thing for me, because before I was sort of naive to, I'm going to do X and Y, and I want to do Z. But in reality, once you're sort of in that seat, it is, what are we going to do? So I might struggle with these questions. So maybe with that, can you say your question one more
I
time?
will say it one more time, and I do have actually a statement. There's one more person whose name you'll see in the ballot, Elaine Lipton, and I'm just going to read a statement from her, if that's okay. She says, "Dear citizens, voters, and friends of Eastham, my apologies that I'm unable to be here with you tonight at a previous commitment in Boston. For those of you who do not know me, I have lived in Eastham for 25 years and have 2 children, both of whom went to school here. During these 25 years, I've been very involved in the community, both professionally and as a volunteer. Currently, I serve on Affordable Housing Trust. I have a passion for and experience in education, and when the elementary school committee position opened up, with no one else yet on the ballot, I decided to run for the open one-year term. I've since learned that Sarah Higgins also pulled papers for this office. While I did not previously know Sarah, I have communicated with her and find her to be intelligent, communicative, and involved. She has 2 young children and has been serving as library trustee. I urge you, if you have not already voted, to vote for her for elementary school committee. Best regards, Elaine." So she is on the ballot, but because you can't get off the ballot once you're on the ballot.
Okay,
So she asked me to read that. And
Thank you.
You can blush now.
thank you.
And now I will read the question for both of you again. What are your views on implementing energy efficiency measures and upgrades in, fill in the blank, our municipal facilities, in this case, the school?
Do you want me to go first? I would just reiterate what Jamie said, and that, of course, whenever there is the opportunity to make a building more energy efficient, like when the library was built and the, best technology was used to make that library as energy efficient as possible, there should be that opportunity. But from what I've witnessed in terms of the budget and the school committee that I've been to, our top priority is focusing on the education of the children.
Devin?
Yeah, and just sort of, again, those, not just reality, but they've done a great job. I mean, there's a whole host of solar panels on that facility, so I'd say they're in some ways more leading the charge than maybe what we see on average across a building, residential or commercial here.
Nice. Okay, next question is, does the elementary school curriculum involve teaching young children about climate change and what they and their families can do to be part of the solution? Age appropriate, of course. And if not, how can this occur?
I'm not aware of what the curriculum is at the school yet. I'm not sure if that is even something that is addressed by the school committee. So I'd have to say, I'll have to learn about that when I'm on the committee.
Yeah, it's a common request that there's some sort of curriculum mandate from the school board committee, I'm sorry, the elementary school committee. It's not our mandate.
Yeah.
So even if we could, I can respond to that as a parent and tell you what great things are happening with respect to climate change in the curriculum, but that is observing as a parent and not as a candidate, and it's not my responsibility or prerogative as a candidate to be involved with mandating curriculum.
And the last question, because you guys are getting off easy tonight, is what are the biggest needs and how can they be solved? Because that's a big, huge question that you could talk about forever.
Yeah, you want me to go first on this?
Yeah.
All right. I think the one that I've heard from, and again, sort of going back to the intro point of just, it's really about knowing the community you're serving and engaging with them. I think the thing that shocked a lot of friends and community members, not shocked, that's harsh. Thing that was what people asked me about was about, why is this thing going up in X dollars? And that usually tended to come down to special education. But it's to say that going forward, we recognize that that is one where the percentages have gone up quite a bit relative to other costs. But again, once you're sort of sitting in that seat and you realize that there are laws surrounding what you are required to do, in some ways I'd say it's a good thing. It is. It's not in some, it is a good thing. There are laws in the books to protect the people, to protect the children, to get the services that the law says are required, and they're not left behind. As a community, we are required to pay those things. So what I would like to see going forward is two parts. One is better education and communication out to all the communities so that it's not a surprise when we will be, as the law requires, paying those bills again. And two, there are other things that we are already in communication about internally in the committee. If you know that there is something that's a variable cost, it might go up in a year more than you expect, you can set up financial means to look ahead. And so I think specifically with regard to special education, that's on our radar, and we're looking to act on that so that we already have some funds to do in the future.
Could you repeat that question again?
Where did I just put it?
What was the biggest
what are the big
issue?
What are the biggest needs and how can they be solved?
Yes, so I would just reiterate what Devin's saying, that this is what I've heard from the rest of the community, the members in the community that I speak to and what I've read in the paper, was the most recent issue, was just the timing of the budget process and the communication and, the seemingly surprise in the rate and the amount that needed to be spent. So there's obviously areas there, and that I know that the school committee at large is looking at too, to make it more efficient in setting that budget process. So I think the more hands you have on deck who are enthusiastic to help and to support people and think about it, the better that process can be.
Great, thank you. Okay, next, Housing Authority. Actually, can I ask you to introduce yourself, and can I also ask you to tell just briefly what the Housing Authority is, because I'm actually not sure everybody knows.
Good one. Hi, I'm Tracy Vincent. I bought my first home in Eastham in 2000 and moved here full-time from Boston in 2002. So I was part-time for 2 years, and I've been full-time for 22 years. So I was in corporate world when I was in Boston, sales and marketing, and then when I moved here, I opened a small business, ran a restaurant here for 6 years. My husband runs a small business in Wellfleet, and I'm now the general manager for Nauset Rental, which manages short-term rentals for people locally. So lots of small business type experience, and also a realtor, although I'm not practicing it with sales and real estate. It's helpful to make sure we're doing the rentals properly. Got 2 kids. They're both finishing up college this year, one with a master's, one with aircraft maintenance out of 4Cs. It's a great program. So I'm running for the Housing Authority because on the community Facebook page, they were like, we need people for school board, and then someone's like, we need someone for Housing Authority too, and I've been wanting to get involved with the town more, and so jumped at the chance. Housing Authority seemed like a good fit for me, just my real estate background, but the Housing Authority is really, I'm not sure the day-to-day of this role. Orleans Housing Authority actually does the property management for us, but the Housing Authority is responsible for all kind of low-income housing and subsidized senior housing, so that sort of specialty type stuff. And I don't have 100% grip on the day-to-day of the role, so I will be learning that.
Well, let me ask you the same question that I'm
Okay.
asking everybody, right? Which is, what are your views on implementing energy efficiency measures and upgrades in our housing?
Better housing. So, I mean, obviously, when you're doing other projects that you can incorporate energy efficiency into, we absolutely should. I think just to to go out and spend money to do that wouldn't make sense, but when we're doing upgrades, whether it's new buildings or making changes and upgrades, then that should always be at the forefront.
And the other question I have is one that was also asked to the select board candidates, which is, can you comment and/or predict on the effect of the new limits on rental unit permits, what the new limits on rental unit permits will have on near and long-term, full-time rental stock?
So I don't think it's going to have a huge impact, but it might prevent, it might prevent bad things, or so, if corporations, that was the biggest thing, right? They don't want non-resident corporations kind of to buy up and invest to do rentals. Our market being so high-priced and seasonal is not you can't buy a house now and make a profit on it during short-term rentals for 10 weeks. So I don't think it's going to have a huge impact. Certainly isn't a negative thing. So I think it's, yeah.
And I just got another question for you.
Yeah, sure.
Do you believe there's any conflict with your employment and the role with the housing authority role? If
I don't think
not,
there-
please explain.
Oh, no, I don't think there's, I don't think they cross, really. It's subsidized type it's subsidized housing, and elderly housing has nothing to do with rentals. Well, nothing to do with vacation rentals.
All right, great, thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Nauset Regional School Committee. Heather, introduce yourself.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Heather Mashad. I wish that I had, a long-standing relationship with Eastham, but I do. We are generational, and we are the fourth generation to have the property here. And it took me my whole life to get here, but we tried. I wanted to raise my children here. It was really hard to get here, so I hear everything. I convinced my husband, and we are the quintessential COVID people, because I said, oh my Lord, everything has gone remote. We can do it finally. So we've been here now since COVID, but I've been here my whole life. So we're blessed, and my children are blessed. A little bit about me, I probably am going to be the least popular opinion in the room, because I am a certified school business administrator in Connecticut and Massachusetts. My professional career, I worked for UMass Boston, and I had the school's practice team for the Collins Center, so I worked with public education schools all over Massachusetts. I also co-lead the municipal finance team, so I also work with cities and towns all over Massachusetts. So the Cape, I will say, is extraordinarily unique in so many ways, the Cape and Islands in particular. But there is likenesses, especially in Western Massachusetts communities, schools in particular. So I bring a lens that is a bit wider, I think, than a lot of individuals. But long story short, I am really passionate about public education. I always have been. I've been serving on the Booster Club for this year, and I plan on continuing. I also have sat on the middle school council now. This is my fourth year. That's been a wild ride. So I just, I had no intention on doing this, but essentially, like others, a friend called and said, oh my Lord, we have no one that is going to run for the Nauset Regional School Committee. Heather, please help us. So I can't promise that I'll help, but that's how I ended up here a couple years earlier than I originally expected. So I hope that I can do well if I'm elected.
Thanks. And I'm going to ask you the question that you know is coming.
Yes.
What are your views on implementing energy efficiency measures and upgrades in our schools?
So my views in energy efficiency and frankly capital in general is, after living through the school council at the middle school and having my children as a part of the system for several years, there doesn't seem to be a really solid strategic capital plan. And when you put together capital plans for multiple buildings, not just the region, of course, our individual buildings as well, because we're a unionized management here, you really need to think strategically in that any projects that are upcoming on that I prefer a 10-year myself, you consider elements of energy efficiency against the projects and their priorities. So you really are, in many ways, reaping economies of scale and possibly checking, 2 boxes at once. So I feel really strongly about looking holistically at capital planning and certainly looking at, energy management and efficiency altogether.
Thanks. Now, usually there's a ton of questions lobbed at this role. For some reason, there aren't. So
Oh,
I'm going to
good.
ask one, because I've heard the conversations about this. When I hear conversations 4 or 5 times, I know it's probably being held more times than that. But it's around the funding formulas for our schools. Do you think that changes are needed? Is a conversation that should happen? Are there better ways to fund the regional district and to put the balance back on the towns in a different way?
Well, I won't say one method is absolutely better than the other, but I will say that there is evidence that a methodology that smooths out drastic jumps in increases is normally a better way for a community to handle a burden such as an education system, whether it be local or regional. Another impactful measure that Eastham and, the Outer Cape towns feel is, I mentioned, we're a unionized governance structure here for school districts. That is, I believe there's only 5 left in Massachusetts, is an extraordinarily old version of educating students in that the elementary schools, in many cases, are governed individually by the town, but yet they share certain central office staff and other overhead. What we have found is there lacks efficiency in those management structures because essentially you're double doing many things, right? Because you're doing multiple types of operational and management type activities more than once for each individualized school, then plus the region. So I think there's a lot of pieces to that question that probably should have a very valid and worthy conversation.
Great, thank you very much.
No problem.
Okay, and finally, the Library Board of Trustees, which is Sarah again, and Willow. And if you want to sit next to each other, you can just talk from 2 different places. Do you want to introduce yourself wearing a different hat this time?
No,
Just checking.
she's still the same person.
I don't want to skip you, Willow.
Willow Shire. I have a picture of my mom and I on First Encounter Beach in 1954. I was 6. And it's my first memory that didn't come from a photograph. And I remember it was the time when kids were free range. So my mother sent my brother, we were staying in her cousin's cottage on the bluff overlooking First Encounter. And my mother would send us out at low tide, go find something. And so 6-year-old me and 4-year-old Winter would go out and we'd, drag back horseshoe crabs. And I remember saying, I need to live here. And in 1980, I built a house on Samoset Road, walking distance right up from First Encounter Beach. And so I've been here since 1980. I built the house with the tree house. And it was, I belonged here all along. This is where I was supposed to be. So it's, there is a story to my name, but it requires a glass of Prosecco. We got to share that. And it's an interesting story. But I found out tonight that I was born in Maine, and Eleanor knew exactly where I was in Maine. And let me tell you, Cape Cod's way better than Maine. Way better than Maine. So I now live over on Nauset Road, 640 Nauset. We've been building this house for 10 years. We were homeless for one, so I understand what couch surfing is all about. But it's, even then, there was a sense of community that just kept us all here and all together. Now, my partner was born into a Portuguese fishing family in Provincetown, so he says, I may have come in 1980, but I'm still a blow-in. So I'm a blow-in.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you both this question, which is a little unfair for the library, but maybe you could take it like, how is the library going to continue to work on energy efficiency measures and upgrades? I mean, the library is the poster child for all things green. But how are you
Yeah.
going to continue it going forward?
Well, I said I built a house in 1980, and I built the exact same house in 2024. It's 1,200 square feet, it's 4 rooms, and it's an entirely different, it's the same floor plan, but it's an entirely different house because the building codes changed a lot in 40 years. No longer do you have 2x4 walls, you have 2x6 walls with all that extra insulation. And I know it's more expensive, a 2x6 is more expensive than a 2x4. But the value you get, I don't turn on heat. We have a heat pump. I don't turn it on from the 1st of May because it kind of heats up with the sun or the oven. It's little. And it's fine. So I know it's more expensive, that a lot of things are more expensive, but I think there's a payback, not just, there is a dollar and cents payback to being energy efficient, as well as kind of a moral value to being energy efficient. And it's advancing so quickly. The technology is moving so fast. So whenever there's an opportunity to something breaks down, something needs to be replaced, it's always good to replace it with something that's better and energy efficient.
My experience so far at the library is Willow is a great example of someone that is continuing to make energy efficiency a priority. She presented the project to put in better lighting in our wonderful art gallery in the library. It just didn't have enough light to specifically track lighting for the exhibits. And and of course, it was going to be LED lighting. That was one of the stipulations in the project. So I would just say it's always on the forefront of everybody's mind in any type of project we are doing. I will say to tie in the school thing as well, there is an initiative of the trustees that we give a book to the graduating 5th graders of Eastham Elementary every year. And this year's book is about climate change.
Oh.
Maybe next year's book, too.
Well, everyone loves the library, I guess there's no questions, but in the few minutes that we have left in this hour, could each of you take a couple of seconds to talk about some of the priorities or things that you hope to see implemented in the library in the near future?
I think what we talk a lot about is different ways through the programming to reach everybody in the community, because it is such a central part of the community. I'll say for the several years that I've lived here, probably more than half of the friends I've made, I've met them at the library. That it's my children's favorite place to go. And then on the other side of it, for our older community here too, it's a lifeline for them to socialize. So I definitely think we talk a lot about, and with Melanie, the director, and the other librarians, how to reach like the high schoolers and the middle schoolers and kind of bridge that gap between, we're definitely a big hit with the youngsters and the older folks and how to get the people in the middle, but.
We're doing lots better with the people in the middle.
Yeah, yes, Mario
Video
Kart or
games.
Pokemon things, so I'm learning about things that are getting them in there too. So I think that's probably, the thing we talk about a lot is how can the library serve the entire community?
Yeah, it's just the cultural heart and soul of a lot of people's life in Eastham. I write all the thank you notes, so I get a lot of the letters that come in. I'm the secretary on the board of trustees. And it's not unusual for someone to write a letter and send a $10 gift and say, we visited Eastham on vacation. I'd never been to Cape Cod before. We visited Eastham on Cape Cod, in Eastham, and our favorite part was the library. And she sent a $10 donation. And that happens, and they were from Indiana. No wonder they like the ocean. But they didn't mention the ocean. They mentioned the library. And we really do try to have something for everyone. We do between 22 and 30 art exhibits a year. And I think you've all seen some of them. And it just gives local people who may not have ever exhibited anywhere else in their life time to hang up their work. And they are so proud of it, and they'll do a little reception. And it's just, that kind of thing just happens over and over again, whether it's art or it's music or it's reading aloud, whatever it is, we just want to encourage everyone. It's a happy place.
Thank you all. Thank you to Bob and Jamie and Devin and Sarah and Tracy and Heather and Sarah again and Willow for being part of this hour. Thank you to everyone who's been here with questions and listening. And go out and vote.
Thank you all. I want to thank Bev Hobbs, the timekeeper here, and special thanks to Teresa for coming and helping us once again. Thank you to Cindy Nicholson for helping me put this together, and thank you all of you for your service. That's so admirable, and we have a lot of people from different committees that I'm watching here tonight that also serve in different ways and different capacities, but we're looking forward to your service with us, and if we can help again, please reach out to us.
Thank you, Jim.
Good night, folks.
Jim, thank you for the Chamber of Commerce for hosting this, and I just want to say, shout out, you do so many things, from Hydrangea Fest, everybody, garden tour, July 9th, come on the Eastham Garden Tour. It's the best garden tour on the Cape. We've been told that by people from Chatham.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.